Hello everyone. If you're watching this video, thank you. I know it's going to be a long one, and I know not everyone is going to make it all the way through to the end, but if you do, I genuinely appreciate that because I'm going to ask for one thing today. I don't think it's unreasonable. I'm not going to ask you to necessarily agree with me 100%. I'm not going to ask you to take my side or anyone's side for that matter. I'm not asking you to change your opinion, although that's possible. I'm simply asking you to hear me directly before you decide who I am. Over the last several months, a lot has happened in this hobby, particularly what you see in front of you, Japanese gravure cards. Some of you might know me well. Some of you have bought from me before. Some of you may have only watched my streams. Some of you may have only heard my name mentioned by someone else. And some of you may have absolutely no idea who I am or what these cards are. This video is for all of you. I wanted to make this video for a long time, not because I want to attack anyone, not because I want more drama, not because I want to start another argument. In fact, I purposefully waited. I wanted enough time to pass so that I wasn't making this video out of anger or frustration. I wanted to be able to look back at everything that's happened over the past few months, explain my story, my perspective, and why I've made the decisions I've made, admit where I think I could have done better, and hopefully give people a better understanding of who I am. If at the end of this video you still disagree with me, that's okay. But at least you'll be disagreeing with what I actually think and say, not what someone else has told you I think and said. That's all I've ever wanted. Let me start by answering the most basic question. Who am I? Some people probably think I just showed up one day on Whatnot selling Japanese gravure cards. That is partly true. You have to start somewhere. But that's actually the newest chapter in a much longer story. I've been selling online since 1999. Think about that for a minute. 1999, 27 years ago. That was before YouTube, before Facebook, before Whatnot, before Palm Street, before smartphones for that matter, before live stream selling, before some of you were even alive. Back when buying something from a complete stranger over the internet was still a brand new idea for a lot of people. That's when I started. I've now spent 27 years building online businesses. I didn't bring 27 years of gravure experience into this hobby, but I did bring 27 years of business experience, of card selling business. That's a difference. I started selling, and I will show you here, Magic the Gathering cards. Most of you might be familiar with these. You might not collect them, but you've probably heard of Magic the Gathering. This happens to be a graded card. I also do sell a lot of non-graded cards. For many years, of those 27 years, that was my world. And it still is. I still do sell Magic the Gathering cards on eBay. Over those 27 years, I learned how to price inventory. I learned customer service. I learned how to deal with difficult buyers and difficult sellers. I learned how to compete. I learned how to source inventory. I learned what happens when markets go up. I learned what happens when they come crashing back down. I learned how to survive. And over time, once I was ready to expand, I started with benchwarmer cards. You can see it's somewhat similar to the Japanese gravure cards, basically a good-looking model on a card. Similarities. I enjoyed them. I met a lot of great collectors. It was a fun hobby. But if I'm being honest, something was still not right. Something was missing. Then I discovered Japanese gravure cards. Then everything changed. The photography, the card quality. The cards themselves, the rarities, searching for cards halfway around the world, the Japanese market itself, the excitement of finding those cards and bringing them here. I found myself staying up late researching sets I've never seen before, models I've never heard of before, companies I've never heard of before, trying to understand and learn, trying to understand what made cards worth what they were, trying to understand what collectors actually wanted and what they cared about. For the first time in a long time, and in those 27 years, I felt excited about learning something completely new and different. That's why I entered this hobby. Not because I wanted to take over someone else's business, not because I wanted their customers, not because I was trying to replace someone, not because I was trying to be number one, not because I thought there was easy money to be had, because I genuinely enjoyed it. Even today, one of my favorite parts of this business is when a shipment arrives from Japan, opening the box, seeing the cards, finding something rare and new, researching, learning, starting all over again. Then eventually finding the right collector who appreciated that card or that set as much as I do. That's why I'm here. The hobby itself, not the drama, not the competition, the hobby, the cards, and the people. Now, another thing I think people should understand about me is this. 27 years in business teaches you a lot. It teaches you that customers come and go. It teaches you that competitors come and go. It teaches you that platforms change, policies change, markets change. Sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind, sometimes you're the new guy, sometimes you're the established seller. If there's one thing those 27 years have taught me, it's this. Businesses survive because they adapt, not because everything always goes your way. I've seen marketplaces change. I've seen fee increases kill businesses. I've seen policy changes kill businesses. I've seen hobbies become incredibly popular and then fade away. I've had fantastic customers. I've had customers who buy once and never come back. I've made decisions that worked out exactly as I've hoped for. I've made decisions that, looking back, I probably would have handled differently. That's business. That's life. No one survives 27 years by believing they're always right. You survive by learning, adapting, and being willing to change. That philosophy has shaped every major business decision I've made in those 27 years, including the decisions that eventually brought me here. So let's talk about why I started selling Japanese gravure cards. One thing that has been bothered me for a long time is the idea that I somehow entered this hobby to take something away from someone else. Nothing could be further from the truth. This hobby isn't like opening up a pizza shop across the street. It's collecting. It's interacting. It's people, not just the cards. People buy from people that they trust. People buy from sellers they enjoy. There's room for different personalities, different business models, different philosophies. I honestly believed when I entered this hobby that there was room for everyone. I still believe that today. I never expected every collector to buy from me and only me. In fact, after 27 years of selling online, I've learned something that's actually very important. Not everyone is going to choose me. Even when I think my pricing is better, even when I think my customer service is better, even when I think my packaging is better, even when my choices are better, even when I think my business philosophy is better, some people are still going to choose someone else. And that's okay. That's competition. Healthy competition isn't about making sure everyone buys from you. Healthy competition is about giving people choices. If I provide a better experience, great. If someone else provides the experience a collector is looking for, that's their decision. I've never believed there should be only one successful seller in any given hobby. In fact, I think the opposite. I think competition should make us all better. It should encourage better pricing, better customer service, more honesty, more transparency, better experiences for everyone, buyer and seller. That's the kind of business I wanted to build, not a business based upon convincing people someone else was terrible. A business where people chose me because they believed in what I was trying to build. That brings me to something I think is probably the single most important word in my business, and I just mentioned it: trust. Everything I've ever tried to build comes back to trust. I want people to understand how I price my inventory and why I price it that way. I want people to understand why one card costs more than another. I want people to know that if I make a mistake, I'm going to own it. I want people to know that if I get a great deal sourcing cards from Japan, I'm not automatically going to charge the maximum amount just because I can. That's not the business I've tried to build. Not because it's the only way to do business, because it's the way I believe in. Does that mean I've always been perfect? No, absolutely not. I've made mistakes. I've let frustration get the better of me at times. I've I've handled some conversations in ways that, looking back, I wish I had handled differently. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But there's a difference between making mistakes and abandoning your principles. The principles themselves have not and will not change. Transparency, fair pricing, treating people with respect, admitting when I could have done something better, and earning trust instead of demanding it. Those ideas were true before I ever sold a single Gravure card, before I ever found Whatnot. They're still true today. And they're going to be true long after this video is published. Because at the end of the day, this video isn't really about the past 6 to 8 months. It's about explaining who I am before I explain what happened. Because if you don't understand the person, you'll never understand the decisions. So now that you know where I came from, let me explain how everything changed. Let's talk about Whatnot. When I first started selling Gravure cards there, I was excited. It was a completely different way of connecting with collectors than eBay had ever been. Instead of listing a card and hoping someone buys it days, weeks, or maybe even months later, I could actually talk to people. I could answer questions. They could see the cards live. I could explain why I liked a particular card. I could tell people about the model, the manufacturer, the rarity, or why I thought something was undervalued or overvalued. It wasn't just selling. It was sharing a hobby with other collectors. Live. In person, as best as it could be. That's what I enjoyed the most. As my business grew there, two things became a major part of what I offered. The first, sealed boxes. The second, pin spot cards. Those two categories represented the vast majority of what I sold there. They weren't just products, they were the foundation of my business on that platform. Then everything changed. Whatnot announced that sealed boxes would no longer be allowed. I'll be honest, I didn't like that decision. I don't think anybody did. From a business standpoint, it hurt. From a collector's standpoint, it hurt. I enjoyed opening the sealed products. My customers enjoyed buying them. If I could have snapped my fingers and made that policy disappear, I definitely would have. But that wasn't the situation I or all of us were in. The reality was simple. The policy existed. And once it existed, I had a decision to make. I could ignore it, I could try to work around it, or I could adapt. After nearly 3 decades of selling online, my instinct wasn't to fight reality. It was to figure out how to keep serving my customers within the reality that existed. So I adapted. Instead of selling the sealed boxes, I started opening every box live first. Every pack, every card, nothing hidden, nothing left to chance, no mystery. Collectors saw exactly what was inside the box before deciding whether they wanted that specific box. All within whatnot policy. Sometimes the box was incredible, sometimes it wasn't, but either way, everyone saw exactly what they were getting. That format required something I'd spent years building: trust. If someone bought one of those boxes, they knew exactly what they were receiving. No surprises, no mystery, no bait and switch, no tricks, no wheel spins. You got what you saw. And you know what? It worked. Speaking of trust, I had to trust my customers in that process too. I had to trust that every box I opened would be bought. And it did work. It worked for a while. Not because it was identical to selling sealed boxes. It wasn't. It didn't bring the same excitement. It worked because my customers trusted me and I trusted them. They trusted that I was showing them everything honestly, whether the box was amazing or disappointing. Looking back, I'm actually proud of that. Because instead of complaining about the rules, I found another way. That's what 27 years in business teaches you. When one door closes, you don't spend your time yelling at the door. You look for another way through it. Now, during that same period, there were also public disagreements within this hobby. I'm not going to spend the rest of this video talking about individuals. That's not the point. But I do think it's important to explain my philosophy because it's one of the biggest reasons those disagreements happened. One of the things I felt very strongly about was following the published policies of the platform. That doesn't mean I loved every policy. It doesn't mean I agreed with them, and far from it. I disagreed with them. But I also believed something that I still believe today. If you're choosing to build a business on someone else's platform, you have to decide whether you're willing to operate under that platform's rules or not. If your answer is yes, then follow the rules. If your answer is no, then maybe that platform, this business, or honestly any business isn't the right place for you. That's the philosophy that guided me personally. That's the same philosophy I've applied throughout 27 years of selling online. Platforms may make decisions you don't like. Sometimes those policies and decisions are frustrating. Sometimes they become expensive. Sometimes they're disappointing. But I've learned that constantly trying to fight a platform usually is not a good long-term business decision. Adapting is. That belief is also why I supported, now listen to me, enforcing published policies. I know that's going to upset a lot of people. Some people believed I was trying to hurt other sellers. Some believed I wanted to destroy the hobby. The entire hobby, people thought I was trying to destroy it. I want to be very clear. That was never my goal. In fact, my thinking was exactly the opposite. I believed it wasn't fair for some sellers to follow the rules while others ignored them. That's not equal competition. More importantly, I believe that if a small niche like this is constantly pushing against published platform policies, it's increasing the risk that platform would continue to impose against that niche. They're going to examine that category much more closely. Do I know exactly how Whatnot makes their internal policy decisions? No, none of us do. I'm not claiming otherwise. I'm simply explaining the philosophy that guided my own decisions. I believed then, and I still believe now, the healthiest long-term future for any niche, especially this one, comes from building your business within the rules that exist rather than constantly trying to work around them or violate them. Reasonable people might still disagree with that. I can tell you many people, once that policy was established, pushed me and told me to break the rules. I want people to understand why I made those decisions that I made. Not because I enjoyed the conflict, not because I wanted to hurt anybody, because I genuinely believed it was the best long term path, not just for me, not just for buyers, for everything, for everyone. We needed to follow those policies, whether we disagreed or agreed with them or not. While all of this was happening, I I also experienced something that was personally difficult. There was a lot of criticism, there were a lot of rumors, there were a lot of comments about me and my business. People would come into my streams already believing things about me before they had even ever spoken to me, listened to me, bought from me. Some people gave me a chance anyway, others didn't. I'm not going to spend the rest of this video debating every rumor or responding to every accusation. That would take hours. And honestly, I don't think it would accomplish much at all. What I will say is, it was discouraging. There were days when I felt like I was spending more time defending myself than sharing in a hobby I genuinely loved. That's not why I entered this business. I didn't wake up one morning thinking, you know what I want more of today? More arguments, more accusations, more lies. I wanted to talk about the cards. I wanted to share my new inventory. I wanted to buy even more inventory. I wanted to help collectors build collections they were excited about. That's what I enjoyed. Then we got hit with another major change. Pin spots. You guys all know the pin spots policy. All of a sudden it became wrong to sell pin spots. New policy. So I had to sit down and look at my business honestly. The conclusion was fairly obvious. Between the sealed box policy and the new pin spot policy, that accounted for roughly 90% of my business and what I had been building, and it was no longer allowed on the platform. So at that point, I had another decision to make. Is it time to start ignoring the rules? Keep pushing those boundaries? Or accept the reality that, for me, the answer was clear. Whatnot itself was no longer the right platform for my business that I had built over the past 6 to 8 months. Leaving Whatnot was not about quitting. It wasn't about giving up. It wasn't about running away. It wasn't because I stopped loving the hobby or the people. It was simply recognizing that my business and the Whatnot platform were no longer a good match. Every business owner eventually faces decisions like that. Sometimes your products are just no longer a good fit for the particular marketplace that you're on. Marketplaces change, buyers change. Sometimes you just have to pivot. That's exactly what I did. Was I angry? Of course I was. I'd spent months adapting my business after the sealed box policy. I'd built an entirely new way of selling based upon trust. And now another policy change meant that most of my inventory no longer had a place there. It felt like months and months of work, disappointed almost overnight. That was hard. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. I was sitting on 300 boxes of inventory that I didn't know what I was going to do. It also hurt watching some customers decide not to follow me off of Whatnot. Some people just really wanted the sealed boxes. Some people wished I would simply continue selling them despite the platform's rules. I understand why they felt that way. They enjoyed the experience. I enjoyed the experience. But I couldn't build my business on a strategy that I just didn't believe in. So I made what I believed was the harder decision. I left. I left Whatnot. And in many ways, I had to start all over again. When people ask me why didn't you just stay, the answer's simple: because the business I believed in no longer fit the platform where I had built it. So instead of continuing to fight that reality, I decided to build something new. Starting over at my age wasn't part of the plan. If you've ever built something from the ground up, you know how much time and money and sleepless nights goes into it. It's not just about inventory, it's relationships, it's trust, it's the routine, it's knowing where your customers are, it's having people who look forward to seeing you every week. When I decided to leave Whatnot, I knew I wasn't just changing platforms, I was walking away from a community I'd spent months building. Some people did come with me, but most did not. And I guess I don't blame them. People get comfortable with where they are. Some people only wanted to buy from Whatnot, whether it was sealed boxes or not. And even though some loved the format, some simply didn't want to learn another platform. Some people just get annoyed having to download another app. I get it. We all have so many apps on our phones. We just don't want to do it. I understand all that. But from my perspective, it meant starting over again. Again. That was probably the hardest part. Not losing a platform, losing momentum, losing the growth I was building. It's like opening up a brand new store where nobody knows who you are. That's what it felt like. I had the same inventory, the same experience, the same person, but no audience. That was frustrating. There were days where I wondered if it was even worth it anymore. There were days when I questioned whether I should be selling something else, maybe just go back to Magic the Gathering, maybe go back to Benchwarmer, maybe go back to eBay, and step away from Gravure altogether. Certainly would have been easier. But every time I thought about leaving, it came back to the same answer. I still loved the hobby. That hadn't changed. The platform changed, the business changed, the circumstances changed, the audience changed, but my interest in the Japanese Gravure cards never did. I still enjoy searching for the cards. I still enjoy finding rare cards at a great price. I still enjoy opening a shipment when it comes in, throwing it up on a YouTube video to show everyone, and seeing something I've never owned before. I still enjoy helping someone find the card they've been searching for. That's why I stayed. Not because it was easy, because I genuinely enjoy what I do. So I started rebuilding. I moved more of my business back to eBay. Even the Japanese Gravure cards, I put them up on eBay. I began experimenting with Palm Street. I tried different formats. Some worked, some didn't. I've certainly made mistakes along the way. I've tried ideas that sounded great in my head and fell completely flat. I've also found new ideas that I never thought I would have discovered or worked if I hadn't been forced to adapt. That's another lesson that 27 years in this business teaches you. Sometimes the thing you think sometimes you think it's the end of your business and it's actually the beginning of another chapter. Would I have chosen this path? Honestly, probably not. If none of those policy changes had happened, my business would probably look very different than it does today. But they did happen, so I had two choices: spend the next 5 years talking about what it used to be, or spend the next 5 years building what's to come next. I'm choosing to build. One thing I also want to address is something I've seen people say from time to time, that I almost care too much about my pricing, that I talk too much about transparency, that I make too big a deal out of value. The reason is actually very simple, because for me, that's the kind of buyer I am. If I'm spending hundreds or even thousands of dollars like you guys do on collectibles, I want to understand what I'm buying. I want to understand why something costs what it costs. I want to understand why someone's trying to sell something at a certain price. And I want to know that the seller is being honest with me. That doesn't mean every seller has to run their business the way I do. There isn't one correct business model. Some sellers focus strictly on being entertaining. Some focus on high-end premium inventory at high-end premium prices. Some focus on speed, just pumping cards and sales out there. Some focus on mystery. Some focus strictly on the community. None of those approaches are automatically wrong. My approach has simply been different. I've always wanted people to understand my thinking, how I source my inventory, why I price something the way I do, why I pass savings along when I find a great deal. Could I maximize every dollar on every single card I sell? Probably, but that isn't the business I've chosen to build. I'd rather have someone feel good about buying from me and come back over and over again than to make one sale, make an extra $5, and they never come back again because they've lost my trust. Trust has always been worth more to me than squeezing every last dollar out of every single transaction and potentially losing that customer for life. Now, let me say something that may surprise some of you. I have not been perfect. I've never claimed to be. Looking back over the last several months, there are conversations that I wish I had handled differently. Times when I let frustration show. Times when I probably should have stepped away from the keyboard instead of responding. But when you're this passionate about something, it's easy to become defensive. When people are saying things about me that I don't agree with or that aren't true, you almost have to become defensive. Especially when you feel your reputation is being questioned. That doesn't excuse every interaction, but that also doesn't forgive what they've done. I'm not here to pretend I handled every situation perfectly, though. I didn't. If I can go back, there's certainly things I would have done and said differently. Things I'd phrased differently. Situations I maybe should have simply ignored. Experience teaches you that and will always continue to teach you that. You don't grow by pretending you're flawless. You grow by recognizing where you could have done better and by doing better. I hope I've done that. So where does this leave me today? Honestly, I'm optimistic, maybe a little cautiously optimistic. Not because rebuilding has been or will be easy, because I think I've finally built a business that's a better reflection of who I am. Aoi Velvet isn't simply a name. It's everything I've tried to describe in this video: transparency, fairness, learning, passion for the hobby, respect for the collectors, a willingness to adapt instead of giving up. That's what I want people to think of when they hear my name. Not rumors, not arguments, not social media comments. Those things hopefully will fade. Your reputation doesn't. I'd rather spend my time earning a good reputation than arguing about what someone else has developed about me. If you've watched this far, thank you, seriously. Whether you've bought one card from me, 100, or none at all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell my story and to hopefully serve you better in the future. I'm not asking you to stop buying from anyone else. I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm not asking you to agree with every decision I've ever made. I'm asking for something, honestly, a lot simpler. Judge me based upon your own experience with me. If you've bought from me, judge by how I treated you. Judge by how my pricing is. If you've watched one of my streams, judge me by what you saw and experienced. If we've talked, judge me by that conversation, not by a rumor, not by a screenshot someone's made without context, not by what someone else thinks of me. Make your own decisions for yourself, because that's fair. And honestly, that's all I've ever wanted. If after watching this video you decide I'm not the seller for you, I respect that. I sincerely wish you well and fun in your collecting. But if something I said might have resonated with you, if you appreciate the transparency, if you appreciate someone who's willing to admit mistakes, adapt, and keep moving forward, then I'd love the opportunity to continue to or to try to start earning your trust. Not because I think I deserve it, because trust isn't something anyone deserves automatically. It's something that has to be earned. One interaction at a time, one shipment at a time, one card at a time, one box at a time, one customer at a time. That's how I build a business. That's how I've done things since 1999. That's how I'm going to build Aoi Velvet. And that's how I plan to keep building for many, many years to come. Everyone, thank you for listening. If you want to connect on a personal basis, you can reach me through Palm Street. If you don't know how to, you'll figure out a way to connect with me. If you don't want to connect with me on a personal level, I truly understand. I'd like to go into this with a fresh start. If you want to discuss some things, please reach out. I hope to see you all and some new faces on my upcoming streams. Let's get some great cards into your hands for a great price and have lots of fun doing it. Everyone, this is 39 minutes long. For those who have listened to the whole thing, I'm happy you may have learned more about me and how I've gotten to this point. Any questions, please reach out to me. Thanks, everyone.